If you need a science credit with a lab for your high schooler, and maybe the traditional science courses aren't necessarily for you, what about forensic science? I'm going to show you inside, show you how this works, and tell you how it's gone for us this year. My name is Rachel, and on this channel I like to talk about all things homeschool, and that includes curriculum. I have a high schooler, technically 11th grade, although future video we might tweak his graduation plan a little bit. In case my son would like to go to college, he's not exactly sure what he wants to do, but we're preparing for college just in case. Most of the colleges that I looked up, which were several around the area, several that I thought he would be interested in going to, they only required, now I can't remember if they required 2 or 3 years of science, but 2 labs. And so this would be his 3rd year of science, but he needed a science with a lab. So I asked him this year if he wanted to do biology. And then, because I hesitated, and this was so cool that I hesitated, Masterbooks came out with a brand new forensic science program. So this is the first year that this has been out. We are trailblazers for this one, and they are going to be making some improvements. One in particular that I think will interest you. But this is their first year, created by a Jennifer Hall Rivera, who actually works for Answers in Genesis. I have seen at the Ark in the Creation Museum that she is a speaker there and has some workshops and camps. Like if you live in the Creation Museum Ark Encounter area, they have like summer camps for forensic science, and I think she's in charge of that over there. So this is pretty cool that this was written by her. So I'm just going to get right into it and show you inside the books so you can see the scope and sequence, because I actually have 2 different books here. This is the teacher's manual, this is where all the worksheets are, and then there's the textbook. Excuse the glare. Got my son a notebook and how we adjusted it. I should mention I don't just have a high schooler, so if you're interested in other content besides high school, I also have a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old. So there's all kinds of videos on my channel. This is let's see, is this my 3rd year or 4th year on YouTube? I have a plethora. Check out all the playlists, every single video. My playlists are very organized. So if you are looking for something in particular, probably searching the playlists is the easiest way to find it. All right, so this is what the forensic science comes with, the teacher's guide and the student textbook. I'm going to go over the scope and sequence first for you. So the textbook is literally just that. It's just all of the reading material, but you can see this is laid out very nicely. This is light blue, so it's not even black and white print. It's kind of nice to look at. All kinds of interesting material in here. In fact, in our family, we really enjoy CSI shows and real life police crime solving and all that. So this definitely appealed. Look at that, weapons from a biblical worldview. This definitely appealed to my son, and he has been enjoying it a whole lot. Here's what this curriculum is going to go over. What is forensic science, the 2 types of science, the crime scene, evidence collection and documentation, and then we go into physical evidence, drugs, tool marks, weapons, documents, computer forensics, biological evidence, DNA, serology, toxicology, anthropology, entomology, death scenes, and then transitory evidence, human fingerprints, animal fingerprints, fingerprint processing, trace evidence, part 1, hair versus fur, trace evidence, part 2, fibers, glass and paint, pollen and soil, impressions, arson and explosive investigation, residues and patterns, microscopes, crime labs, mobile forensics, facial reconstruction, forensic odontology, forensic psychiatry, and then the judicial system, including chain of custody and courtroom testimony. So the teacher's guide obviously is what you're going to want to look through to know how to prepare for this course. It gives you up front a master supply list. So if you wanted to get all of your stuff at the beginning of the year, make sure that you had it. There is one master list, so you can decide. See, I went through it. Most of these are household items or things that I already had, or, you know, like food items. I wasn't going to buy a potato ahead of time. I wasn't going to buy, colored marshmallows until I needed them because I don't want them to go bad. But kitchen supplies, do I have those? Household supplies, and then craft supplies, lab supplies, miscellaneous supplies. So I circled the things that I wasn't sure if I needed to get ahead of time. This is nice if you want to do your shopping up front. And I will say, I looked at the Masterbooks has an app where you can join certain forums. So I looked at the high school forum, and I haven't used it myself, but some of you already reached out to me and said that you heard that there had been issues with forensic science. So I went out to the app to see what all of the buzz was about. And I joined the high school app and I did a search for forensic science. The only thing that I saw out there was there might have been, a few editing errors in the book. The main thing that I saw people asking for, are you going to sell a lab kit? And I have to say, okay, and they said that they were eventually. They don't have one yet. And I have to say that would be very, very helpful, because one of the labs that we didn't do, that my son was really disappointed that we didn't do, was the fingerprint. Okay, I should clarify, brushing for fingerprints, because we did do the one where you stamp your finger and, do the print. This is like brushing for fingerprints, like fingerprints on the windows, fingerprints on the tables and stuff like that. Because you either needed to get a fingerprint kit, which the ones that I looked up were pretty pricey for one lab, or you could use like eyeshadow, or graphite pencil shavings, they said. And I gave him some old eyeshadow of mine. He didn't want to use it. He wasn't interested in doing the other kind. He wanted an actual fingerprint kit, or he didn't want to do it. So we ended up skipping it. But if they could add something like that in a lab kit, that would be so helpful. And also on the drug testing one that we did, that I'll talk about here in a minute, one of the things that you test one of the substance with is a dye. And it said to get iodine. Well, I didn't have iodine. I reached out to one of my nurse friends to see if she had iodine, because when I went to go get it, like looking in the store, the first iodine bottle I saw was $20. That was like at CVS, I think. I did eventually find it at Walmart for $10. But after I did the test, I was like, really? This experiment probably cost me $15. Is an experiment worth $15? I mean, I don't know if I'll ever use iodine again. I know it's an antiseptic, but I have other things. So anyway, that one, I wish that I could have just found somebody who had some, because I only needed maybe a tablespoon worth. So if they come out with a supply kit, that would be huge. And they said that they are coming out with one. So this is just the master supply list, but there also is in the back a detailed supply list. And this one is by lab. So as you can see, I left it all in the book. I haven't really taken advantage of my Homeschool Mom binder this year, but if you have a binder system like I did last year, I'll link this video below in case you want to know how to put it together. I started to do it this year, but then I kind of let that fall by the wayside, and I just left this in here. But if you had one place where you wanted to keep all your Homeschool Mom references, you might rip this one out. That way you can check for every single lab, well, what are the specific things I need for this lab, for this lab? Or the other thing is, okay, otherwise, also on the lab page, which is where I have been looking, just seeing what's the next lab. The materials are also listed right here. So I'm just kind of looking a week ahead to say, okay, is there anything that I need to go out and buy? Styrofoam plate, I definitely don't have that. 4 transparency plates, I do have. Circus peanuts, see, that's something I would need to go buy. Extra fine point permanent marker, disinfecting wipes. So I would need to go out and maybe get some styrofoam plates or see if my mom might have styrofoam. We tend to buy paper plates though. And then circus peanuts. And that's just kind of how I do it. If I leave anything out here, make sure you leave me a question below. I will do my best to answer it. And if this information is helpful to you, please give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment below anyway, you guys. I love interacting with you, and YouTube loves it when you interact with me too. So in the teacher's manual, there's also the list of all the assignments, Masterbooks. Again, if you're not familiar, I don't think I've ever seen a Masterbook curriculum that doesn't have 180 lessons. So if you don't do a 180-day school year, or maybe you supplement with other science. So like, for example, I had our little family co-op, I called it this year, where we also did a campfire curriculum on meteorology. So that counts as science also. So my son isn't probably going to do 180 days. You might want to go through here and decide which lessons they're going to skip. I know some states might only require 150 days or something. So that's just kind of up to you. But also, you know, when we go for a hike, or like when we went to the solar eclipse, I mean, that's a science day. So anyway, you don't have to do 180 days of just forensic science, even if you do require 180 hours of science. And then there's the forensic exercises in here, which I was showing you. That's where, you know, just all the worksheets that they're going to do. You might keep them in here until they're ready for them and just give them a couple weeks at a time. And then I have tabbed back here forensic tests. So if you want to give your kids periodic tests, they're back here. I'm not sure. I gave him a few tests and then I decided I just don't know how I feel about tests. I mean, wouldn't it be more effective if you tested them at the end of the year and see what they remembered versus just at the end of a unit? Because it's all fresh in their mind then. But if you test them 3 months later and they don't remember, did they really learn it? So I think what I'm actually going to do is just ask him at the end of the year what the 3, I don't know what you call it, 3 basic sciences of forensic science that he enjoyed the most or learned the most from, and have him tell me about it. And then also in the back are the answers. So for the daily exercises, you want to answer key if you're not learning along with them. There they are. Now I did this multiple ways. I have had him give me his sheets to grade. I've also, when he and I have met to go over things, I've just had him get his most recent worksheets and I've read the answers, or we've gone over the answers together, and then he just tells me how many he got wrong and I'll mark it down. And I have also, when I have gotten busy, because it happens, right? Mom gets busy, mom gets spread too thin. I also gave him my teacher's manual and had him grade his own work, because he is the type of child that I can trust him to do that. I really look at this science course not as a, oh, he needs to fully understand forensic science at the end of it. I just want him to experiment, to go through the process, and to enjoy learning. But the chances of him going into criminology or criminal justice is pretty low. So I guess that's just how I think about education. You can enjoy learning without knowing 90% of it at the end, and it's still okay. Let's just do lesson 5 for everything. Drugs. That's interesting, right? Ooh, and I just noticed. Okay, lesson 5, drugs. Case study, the death of Michael Jackson. So they're actually studying a real life case study. And the reason why this is for ages, they would suggest this for ages for 11th grade and 12th grade, is because of some of the material that's going to be talked about. Like I showed you the gun, and death scenes and all that. It's up to you. But also, it's very, I think the material in here is also very, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Nerdy. I don't know. Think of a high school science class like chemistry. I mean, some of it's really big words. I don't know what else to say except unless I pulled out my son's. See, like corneated cells versus karyotype cells. There's DNA. This was one of the experiments. I mean, understanding DNA, it's a little bit more high level. That's why 11th and 12th grade is suggested. Okay, so back to lesson 5. You're going to do a case study. They're going to read about the case study. And then facts to consider about the case, drug use from a biblical worldview. This is Masterbooks, so always a biblical worldview is going to be incorporated, including Bible verses here. And then they're going to learn about the different types of drugs that maybe were considered or found in the case. So depressants, stimulants, what are their differences in a low dose versus a high dose? A focus down here on cocaine, opiates versus opioids, and what are their differences and what they might include in real life. Heroin here. I remember the lab we did here because we did a lab for this. It was pretty cool. Hallucinogens. You see what I mean? Why this needs to be for older kids? I can't even pronounce these words. So anyway, you get the point. He's learning about all kinds of different drugs here. Okay, so this is called the drug schedule, and it has to do with how they categorize drugs, and it was created in the 1960s when drug use started increasing. Then they talk about drug collection and testing. Here we go again. Cobalt, thiocyanate. I cannot pronounce this, you guys. Thiocyanate. Big words. Chemistry type stuff. And then you've got your conclusion. And that was lesson 5. Now, lesson 5 is really... So you can see down here on week 5 was lesson 5, and it tells you page 46 to 51, and then do this exercise, and then read pages 51 through 55, and then do this exercise, pages 55 through 57, and then the exercise, so on and so forth, and then there was a lab. So all of that I just showed you, it was a lot of information, but it was really over the course of 4 or 5 days. They're going to split this up, and then you're going to do a little exercise, basic worksheet type stuff to solidify what you just learned. So all of the worksheets, this is typical of Masterbooks. If you're not familiar with Masterbooks, the teacher's guide is really where all of the worksheets are held. So I ripped these out as my son needs them. I didn't just give him this because I wanted to be involved, but we'll talk about that. So I've ripped out large portions because these are perforated, and then you can see they're 3-hole punched. And then he put them in his own binder for work to do. So his exercise 5. So this is what a typical worksheet for forensic science might look like. It's pretty much one sheet per exercise. This one had a multiple choice. Side effects of depressants include, and then he circled all that was relevant. Another common term for depressants is, and then a fill in the blank section here, and then a short answer, which my son is not known for his usage of words and elaborating. So he's very short and to the point. All right, and then the second day's exercise looks very similar, and then short answer on the back. Third day, same. Fourth day, very similar. And then we have, this is just another worksheet. The application reminds me a little bit more of a lab, like how do they apply it? But then you're going to actually test it in your lab. So this particular lab that we did required a lot of prep, we'll say. So you've got the supply list here, which I tried to make sure that I was prepared the day before. And this one also is going to require a microscope. It was pretty cool. We had a lot of different kinds of testing to do with microscopy, which is what does the general appearance look like.
This is a good adjustment. It looks like, literally looks like floating crystals. It's so pretty.
And then staining, you needed the iodine. Heating it, how does it react to heat? The solubility. Ooh, there it is. Baking soda and vinegar reaction. So my son had all of that testing to do for all of these various substances. Baking soda, baking powder, salt, sugar, powdered sugar, and then evidence Z, which was basically me choosing one of these, but not telling him which one it is, and then he had to decide what it was based off of all of these tests up there. So imagine that this is cocaine, this is crack, this is heroin, this is, I don't know, some other white substance. I don't know all the drugs. But they know how each of these drugs reacts to all of these. So when they get a drug that is unknown, they do all those tests and then they compare it to the known drugs and how they react to find out what it is. So that was actually pretty cool, and it's always fun to get the microscopes out. So one of the supplies you're going to need for forensic science is a microscope. And so I'm going to show you the one that we got, and I will put a link below from Amazon. This is actually pretty inexpensive, but it's worked out well. Scientific Exploration 40x to 2000x. There's going to be some microscopes that are going to go way beyond the 2000x, but everything that I've read about science curriculum, you don't really need a microscope that powerful. So this is pretty small. I love how it's like firmly packed in here. So it's very lightweight too, I have to say. I bet you this thing is definitely maybe 5 pounds, if that. So your kids could get it out for you, and with all this insulation, they're not going to drop it. But this is pretty small. It also, I had put my phone up there and got some pretty good images from my phone right here. We haven't used it, but it has an actual attachment to attach your phone to get some images on the screen. So if you have small kids that want to see inside, but maybe you don't want to put their eye up here, or they're too scared to, you can attach your phone and still see it. Now see, this, I just noticed this blue and red. I wonder if I could have used this for the iodine instead. But anyway, it comes with some supplies you're going to need: a little petri dish, little stirrers, little droppers. This is pretty basic, lens cleaning tissue. So some of those supplies that are going to be in your forensic supply list, they might be in this microscope. And then these are the slides that it came with. It came with 5 blank slides. Okay, now I just messed them all up. 5 blank slides. And then this particular microscope also has some bugs already affixed already on the slide. So this is Daphnia. You can't see it from here. I just used the end of the slide to put whatever it was that I needed on there, because I think one of the experiments did call for 6 slides, and I didn't want to buy extra slides just for one experiment. So I just used this one and just used the end of it. So this also comes with some experiments you can do right away. Counterfeit money and hidden symbols. Here's the procedure. Here's how to use the slides, how to stain a specimen. See, if it would have said, or some other stain, not just iodine, then I would have known. So yeah, so there's already experiments in here, which is probably why they gave you some prepared slides all the way. Look, that is totally the experiment my son just did. Human hair versus animal hair. That's so funny. He did that when I wasn't home, and he actually said, Natalie's hair looked just like the dog's hair. Well, according to this, it's not supposed to, so I'm not sure what went wrong. I might have to do that one with them again. And then I told him outside, there's always little rabbits in the yard. We should go find some rabbit hair and see how that looks different. All right, so how we adjusted. When I first got this course, I thought, this is so cool. I want to learn forensic science. I love CSI stuff. But that is how I am about every school year. I want to learn everything, and I just can't. There's only 24 hours a day. There's only so many of those hours where I actually have brain energy and capacity, and I have 2 other children who need my help at a more intense level than my high schooler does. So while I intended to enjoy this with him, it just really wasn't that possible. I have done some of the labs with him, and like I said, I've went over some of his homework with him, but I also don't go over the case studies with him. He can handle everything that's there. I know my child, and I know that he can handle it. So I have just let him go at his pace, which I guess what I mean by pace is he doesn't do every single day the same. It's not like he says, I always do science at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I always do math at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I think he starts every day and says, what do I feel like doing? So if I don't have to go over it with him, then he doesn't have to have a set time in the day, if that makes sense. So it makes it more flexible for him. And it's also more flexible because I'm not always home. I have co-op with my daughters. I have other appointments, or maybe I'm taking my daughters to the library and I'm just not always home. So my son likes working alone. This has worked out well for him, and I know he has really enjoyed this course. And Masterbooks, if you come up with a supply kit, that's going to be huge. If you want to know more about homeschooling in high school, check out my playlist right here. Otherwise, check out this video right here. Until next time, bye.